Now, top-level US officials pulled out of today's talks in London on trying to reach a ceasefire in the Ukraine war, and that's deeply disappointing. Now, it's reported that the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Trump friend and envoy Steve Witkoff aren't coming because Washington is angry Ukraine won't agree to cede sovereignty of occupied Crimea to Russia, and that is alarming. Last time, the Trump administration was angry with Ukraine, it stopped supplying US weapons and cut off the supply of vital American intelligence, vital on the battlefield and in countering Russian missiles striking at Ukrainian cities and towns. And if that happens again, and US Vice President J.D. Vance has again warned America might walk away if Ukraine can't or won't strike a ceasefire deal with Russia, but what chance will Ukraine have in continuing to fight, even with the support of European allies? Now, John Bolton was a national security advisor to President Trump before he resigned during the president's first term. Now, he's anything but a supporter, so I guess we can assume he'll be deeply suspicious of President Trump's thinking. But how does John Bolton see this deadlock playing out? There's only one way to find out. I'm going to be asking him live on the programme in just a minute. And for maybe a change of perspective, how do you reckon this crisis can work out well? And if you can't, tell me why not. Send me a text, 87222, start with the word Times, or a tweet to @TimesRadio. Now then, welcome to the programme, Ambassador John Bolton. Thank you for joining us, Ambassador.
Glad to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. Now, Ambassador, I mean, you've not been sparing in your doubts and your criticism of the new administration. So let me ask you first, Ambassador, can you see a way that this deadlock on Ukraine works out satisfactorily for Ukraine and Western security?
Well, not as long as the Trump administration continues the policy that we've been hearing. I mean, what Vice President J.D. Vance has just said is, as you report, is really no different than what he said during the campaign. Basically, the terms of the deal are Ukraine gives up all territory currently in Russian control. Ukraine commits not to join NATO. You set up a demilitarized zone along the line of control, and both sides pledge not to go to war again. That is, at the present time, equivalent to Ukrainian surrender. And the administration is unhappy that Ukraine isn't willing to surrender. So I think the real question is, if the United States under Trump cuts off further military aid to Ukraine, can Ukraine's other supporters in Europe make up for the difference materially in order to allow Ukraine to continue the war? That's the question Europe now has to answer.
Yeah, and that is a question I'm keen to address and have been attempting to do that. But first of all, just help me with something which I can confess rather puzzles me. It is a plain fact that President Zelensky of Ukraine, he could not cede sovereignty of Crimea, even if he wanted to. That would be contrary to the Constitution. It would just run dead contrary to public opinion in Ukraine. And the team around President Trump, they are politicians. They must be able, Ambassador, to see that, surely.
I don't think they care, honestly. I think that this is the mark of several things coming together. On Trump's side, Vladimir Putin is his friend. He's never been friends with Zelensky. He wants to continue to have good personal relations with Putin and therefore, in his mind, good relations with Russia. He thinks this is Biden's war and he wants it behind him. It's all about Trump, pure and simple. He just doesn't care about Ukraine. On Vance's part, this man is an isolationist. And he doesn't care what happens in Ukraine. He said this consistently going back to his 2022 senatorial campaign, even though Ohio, the state he comes from, has a large Ukrainian American population. His unwillingness to do anything for Ukraine is clear, but it's only the tip of the isolationist iceberg. That's what's at work here.
And is it fair to say the president could, if he chose to do so, make a significant difference in the war in Ukraine just by making a certain statement? It is widely felt that one thing that could break the deadlock, Ambassador, is President Trump applying or saying he intends to apply economic pressure and helping to ramp up that military pressure on Russia. The president is so well aware of the power that he wields now. He must see the truth and the potential of that.
Right. I don't think he wants to apply more economic pressure on Vladimir Putin. I think it would disrupt the friendship. I know this is hard for people to understand. It was hard for me to understand, so I sympathize. None of this is driven in Trump's mind by policy. It's driven by a transactional, ad hoc, personal approach to international affairs. He would love to get a Nobel Peace Prize, and these Ukrainians are not cooperating. And by God, he's got other things to do. So he'll go get his Nobel Peace Prize somewhere else. That's what it's about. Now, that is not true of Vance. He sees cutting Ukraine loose as part of a larger operation to cut the U.S. Loose from most of its traditional allies.
Okay, now look, here is a question, maybe without an answer, but I'm interested in your judgment. You've told us a couple of times there that the president sees his relationship with the leader of Russia as largely a personal one. He values that relationship, even that friendship. Is it conceivable, Ambassador, that the president is exchanging calls with the leader of Russia, maybe unmonitored calls, with whom he says he has this personal affinity? Is that conceivable? It would be against all protocol. Is it possible?
Well, it's possible. I actually don't think so. I think Trump would like us to believe that, but I don't think even he has gone through it. And I think one reason is he now has his personal envoy, Steve Witkoff, off to see Putin tomorrow or Friday for the fourth time on this Ukraine question, right before Witkoff goes off to his next assignment, negotiating a nuclear deal with Iran. And this is the channel that Putin and Trump want to use. And from Putin's point of view, it's very useful. Witkoff hears Putin's propaganda and passes it directly to Trump's ear.
I mean, the president has just posted on Truth Social. I'm not sure much of it will surprise you necessarily, but among other things, the president is saying on Truth Social, nobody's asking Zelensky to recognize Crimea as Russian territory, but if he wants Crimea, why didn't they fight for it 11 years ago? And he says the statement made by Zelensky today, that's rejecting the terms we've been discussing, will do nothing but prolong the killing field, and no one wants that. We are very close to a deal, says the president, but the man with no cards to play should now finally get it done. I look forward, he says, to being able to help Ukraine and Russia get out of this complete and total mess that would never have started if I were president. You won't be surprised by that, but what are your thoughts?
Well, it shows what Trump really thinks is at stake here, and that is he would have prevented the war, and he's determined not to acknowledge that there's any alternative. He has declared in his campaign, in his State of the Union message, that the war is senseless. Senseless. Well, if it's senseless, then nobody can object to stopping it. But ironically, neither the Ukrainians nor the Russians think it's senseless, although for totally different reasons. The Ukrainians are fighting for their freedom and independence. The Russians are fighting to recreate the Russian Empire. Those are not compromisable positions, but that's too complex for Trump. He just wants to be friends with Putin again. He can then eliminate the sanctions on Russia. He can do deals in Russia. That's how he looks at the world, and Ukraine is inconvenient at the moment.
Ambassador John Bolton, always fascinating to get your thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.